it's easier for me to just read off some of this stuff than it is to try to, in my own words, because I get tongue-tied on it. But it says, one of the foreign ministers over in the Knesset in Israel, he says the Palestinian state is a mistake. Now you can see where this is going. This goes all the way back to Sharon, Ariel Sharon, when he withdrew from Gaza. And everybody said he's the one that actually started those settlements, you know, way, way back. So why is he making the Jews leave Gaza now? You know, like 17,000 of them, and they had, you know, state-of-the-art greenhouses, exporting businesses and everything in Gaza. And some of them are still living in trailers now, you know, from being relocated back in 2005. And nobody could understand why he was making them withdraw. Well, through this you'll see that they have an alternative plan. Israel, it might sound like they're backward or not good public, they're not good at public relations because they don't really defend themselves that well. But they have a purpose and a plan that they're going to, that they have behind the reasons that they do stuff. And one of them that came to light after Sharon had his stroke and everything and wasn't able to fulfill what he was intending to do was to just get the Israelis out of Gaza so he could attack Gaza without having his own people in there. Because they had like, you know, 50 soldiers for every Israeli in Gaza having to guard them constantly. So they couldn't go in there and bomb the Gaza Strip if their own people are in there. So get them out of there. Of course, he couldn't say that because the minute that they found out that, or you know, it was said publicly that, well, they're just getting them out, so they're going to go in there and, you know, annihilate them. But that was his purpose. And it's still going on today, even though Sharon, he's still alive and hanging in there, but it's the same thing. He said, the economy minister, Naftali Bennett, held a press conference, and he stressed his party believes the Palestinian state is a mistake and promised to continue to work against it. Our opposition to a Palestinian state and the release of the prisoners from before the elections still stands. We still oppose a Palestinian state and release of terrorists. The idea of granting a den of hungry wolves physical access to the hen house is ludicrous. Every discerning Christian knows that the Palestinians do not want a state of their own if such a state leaves Israel alive and in her land. That's why they won't accept anything. That's why there's no peace. No matter how many times they've met to have peace, even when Arafat was still alive and everything, they offered them everything, and they still won't take it. In 1947, before the state of Israel was declared, when they were still trying to divide, they wanted, the UN tried to give them their own state before Israel was declared a state, and they wouldn't take it. Why? Because they knew that as soon as the state of Israel was declared, they were going to attack them. And they did. The day after it was declared a state, they were attacked by 5 Arab countries. So they held out. They didn't want their Palestinian state. They wanted to get rid of Israel. And that's their agenda. Every Palestinian leader has advocated a state of their own, but they do not allow, they don't want Israel to be allowed to continue to exist. The current Fatah and Hamas leadership strongly advocate this frame of mind. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to support the international effort to grant the Palestinians their own nation. Now see, this is the thing. He says, I'll never divide the land. I'll never divide Jerusalem. I'll never give up the land again. But then he turns around and he's supposed to be negotiating for a Palestinian state. Well, to most people, that doesn't make sense. But he knows that's never going to happen. Is the Prime Minister infected with a suicidal bent? This reporter. I like the way he reports it. Or does he know something that the rest of the world does not know? Bingo. That's what it is. We have long advocated that the international and Israeli offer is a trap for the Palestinians that will result in their prophetic demise. Palestinians know this. So they're not accepting any peace talks at all, even though, you know, superficially they are. They're supposed to be working toward it. But they know it's a trap. They know it's a trap. They know what the plan is. He said, I'll say that again. They have long advocated that the international and Israeli offer is a trap for the Palestinians that will result in their prophetic demise. He says, are you surprised? Consider these archived headline news articles. And then I'll just go over them briefly. Debate settled. Palestinians are the house of Esau. Now this was actually an article in Israel My Glory magazine, you know, Friends of Israel that we talked about. Shedding new light on the plight of the destruction of Edom, the descendants of Esau. The Palestinians are the descendants of the people of Edom, Esau's descendants. Psalm 83. They're going to be wiped out. Hasn't ever happened yet. It's coming. And all the way from Ariel Sharon's 2005 plan to get them out of Gaza, get them out of certain areas that they're now settled in so they can take over. It all really began back then. It was also foretold in Isaiah 34. Remember, the destruction of the Palestinians in Israel and the Palestinians in Edom, or the province of Jordan, is likely to occur simultaneously and by the same hand, Israel. Okay, Israel's going to be the ones that wipe out the people of Edom, the Palestinians. It's coming. And the province of Jordan, remember what we talked about? Jordan has to be under Israeli sovereignty or control, at least security control, in order for midpoint of the 70th week of Daniel, they're going to flee, and they're going to flee into Jordan. They wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't already Israeli territory. This has all got to happen between now and 2017. Like, if the 70th week begins of the new sabbatical cycle in 2015, then halfway through that, they have to be able to flee into Jordan to escape the Antichrist, the remnant. So since September 2000, I always get a jump in my stomach when I think of 2000. There's been a very controversial truth that the real reason Israel is strategically withdrawing from her biblically mandated lands is that she is removing her Jewish settlers from harm's way in the Gaza and the West Bank so that she can annihilate the Palestinians in fulfillment of Obadiah 15 to 18. And that's what I was saying. Remember, I was saying that, trying to say it in my own way, back, you know, a month or two ago. But there it is again. I'm just reading that one more time because this is the key to what's going on now. All of the peace talks and everything that you're hearing about, this is it. Since September 2000, the controversial truth is that the real reason Israel is strategically withdrawing from her biblically mandated lands is that she is removing her Jewish settlers from harm's way in the Gaza and the West Bank so that she can annihilate the Palestinians in fulfillment of Obadiah 15 to 18. The book of Obadiah is very, very small, and it goes right along with Psalm 83. It's the same. Okay, then another news article had the fervent Masonic desire to rebuild Solomon's temple is the driving force behind the events in the Mideast today. The Masonic forces, now this gets a little bit into the Illuminati, which is more political, and we didn't really talk a whole lot about that. But you know who the Illuminati and the Masons and all that are. The Masons are the Knights Templar, and the Knights Templar are tied to the temple. So you can see why they want the temple rebuilt. It says, Masonic forces of the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israel are absolutely determined to rebuild Solomon's temple. This plan will bring about World War III, the Antichrist, and the beginning of the tribulation. Take from Freemasonry its dependence on the temple, leave out of its ritual all references to that sacred edifice and to the legends and traditions connected with it, and the system itself would at once decay and die. Now that was a quote from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. But if you look at it in reverse, it's stating their mission. It's dependence on the temple. They want the temple rebuilt. The whole Freemasonry thing is tied to the Illuminati. The Illuminati are the big movers and shakers in the world. The media, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the bankers, the Bilderbergers, the Skull and Bones, all of it. They're controlling everything. Did anybody ever go on that sinister site that I told you about and look up the Supreme Court building in Israel? In Jerusalem. Google sinister sites and put in the search Supreme Court building in Jerusalem. And you'll see what the Rothschilds built. Israel gave them the land on the condition that they had free reign to build what they wanted. And it's almost like a New Age temple, pyramid. It's sinister when you look at it. They've got the pictures there. And also the Denver airport.
That's bad.
The mural.
I could not believe that's something that's allowed in this country. I was completely shocked when I saw those pictures. It looks like demons are crawling up out of the ground.
Yeah. And it shows, I mean,
they're crawling up like out of hell.
Underground stuff at the Denver airport. All that underground.
Yeah.
Well, that too, but I mean, just the stuff you can see.
The mural
when
you
go
can
through
see
the
if you
airport.
go to the airport.
Wow.
And it's
demonic.
history. It's all, it's a child in a casket, and it's demons, and it's people with the gas masks. I mean, it's there. It's there. And why in the Denver? You ever go through and see the little thumb pads everywhere? They're not activated yet. Because I go through Denver Airport all the time when I go out there, and it's so new age, but it's all not activated yet. Down below, there's an entire city under there.
But also, isn't it interesting how many things have happened to Colorado in the
That's where all the
last 6
people are
months?
going to go if we ever
All
have
the
new
disasters, the fires, the
people.
flooding.
They can live under there for
I mean,
3 or 4 years.
What, flooding of biblical proportions, they called it?
Yeah,
It's like, you know,
if people knew this stuff. Yeah, I was just
most people
talking
don't
to
care. As long as the
No.
grass is green in their yard and they
That's
got
right.
everything they need, they just don't care.
Joe and I were talking about that before everybody got here, and it's like people he said he was out talking to and everything, they don't even know any of this stuff's going on.
No,
Nothing.
They don't, because they think they're going to be living on Earth in their perfect little dreamland for the next 50 years. I mean, they have it all planned out, their retirement and all this, and they just disregard all the signs.
Right. Not to mention, like, seminaries and all are graduating these pastors who don't even know anything. Half of them deny the deity of Christ.
That's
The Bible's just the way it is.
yeah.
Well, like you said about
Yeah.
Is there
about your church that you used to go to, and you want to talk about the book of Daniel. Oh, we don't.
Yeah, and that's Grace Fellowship. That's a great, you know, they got, how many people there? 2,000, 2,500, something? And it's been over 10 years now, but when they were starting up the pace setters, the pacemakers. That's what they called us. They said, well, I was like 55, and most of them were 75. I said, you've been married as long as I'm alive, you know, and most of them were that age. And they said, we want you to pick something that's your passion. We want you to teach it or present it or however. Some of them went to a mission thing, and some of them who were computer savvy and everything, they were going to show older people how to operate a computer or a cell phone, and you know, the helpful things that would help. And I said, I want to do, they said, what's your passion? I said, Israel. I said, I want to do Hebraic roots. And the pastor, Larry Katz, went to Dallas Theological Seminary with Jimmy DeYoung, who I had been going to Israel on his tours with him. And I said, you don't even have to worry about the material, because this is all Jimmy DeYoung. And you knew him, and you went to school with him, and your kids grew up together. And he said, oh, yeah. So they let me go out in the trailer. I had to be out in the trailer. But I had like 10, 12 people.
But they actually allowed you to teach, and if for an extended period? So a lot of times people will say, okay, you can teach, and then as soon as they find out what you're saying, then they stop it.
Well, it was like this group. You're all on the same page. I feel like you're all on the same page as I am, because you're here and you want to hear this stuff. Well, the 10 or 12 that came to my trailer lesson, they were like that. They were interested. Out of 2,000. They just didn't. And so after, I had a big Seder, you know, I made the lamb, and I had a big Seder meal and stuff. I wanted to take them.
People just think it's a joke. They laugh at you. You know, I mean, even I had my stepdaughter yesterday kind of snicker, you know, because, I mean, not that I do anything with it, but I have a little mezuzah or whatever they're called up on the door frame of my house. And my stepdaughter was there yesterday, and she was sitting on the couch where she had a perfect view, and she goes, what is that thing? And I told her, and she said, what, are you Jewish? And I said, I kind of went, yeah, kind of, you know. And my husband's like, no. And I'm like, you know what? I am Jewish, back to my great-grandparents. They didn't talk about it, they hid it, but their name was Rosensteel.
Well, next time, you tell them you're of the Commonwealth of Israel, because that's exactly what Jesus says.
And I told her it's a blessing thing. It has prayers in it. It's just a blessing for the house, is how I explained it to her. But they got kind of a snicker out of it because they just didn't get it.
It's actually Deuteronomy, where they're obeying the mandate to post my words on your gates, on your doors, on your forehead, on your hand. It's symbolic on your hand, whatever you do in the front, on the frontlets of your eyes, which is why they wear the phylacteries.
Which is crazy.
You know, the Orthodox have the little box. They literally put the word, because it's like a mezuzah on their forehead. And if you've ever, hi Judy.
The Cherokee has a light on inside. The Cherokee.
My car?
No, not the one with the country.
No, it's sort of a brown, maroon colored or brown.
It's got that, there's
It's got the
a
dome light on inside.
Yeah.
dome light on, it's, what is it,
Hey, kids.
Is it
Cherokee?
any of us?
Yeah.
a
There's
Cherokee?
somebody next door.
Yeah, there's something going on next door.
Oh, okay.
or something.
Okay.
I saw somebody over in the accountant's office.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
didn't want to have a dead battery. Okay.
If you've ever flown on, has anybody ever flown on El Al?
No.
Well, that's a trip in itself. You know,
What is it now?
El Al is the Israeli airline.
Oh, well, okay.
And
Lufthansa is South American, I think.
El Al, every one of their planes can be converted like that into a fighter.
Oh, yeah?
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
they're capable of just converting right over. And you get real silverware, knives,
You can hurt somebody.
kosher meals, you get regular, you know, silverware. And because you know, we're used to the plastic things on the other airlines and everything. First time I flew in on El Al, it was like, oh, I have a knife and I'm sitting on a plane. It's like, but it's almost all Jewish people from like New York, New Jersey and all that fly regularly back and forth. So the whole plane is just full of Jewish people, unless there's a big group going or something over for a tour. And it's at daybreak, because you always leave, you're flying overnight, and you're getting there like later in the morning toward afternoon. But as soon as it gets light, every Jewish man in that plane gets up and goes to the back. And it's like, that's a plane could have tilt or something. They go to the back, and they put the prayer shawl on, and they start wrapping the phylacteries around their arms and putting the thing on their head and everything, and they're back there and they're praying. They're facing east. And it's something to see. I mean, if you're not used to it, because the whole plane is prayer. They're praying. So,
That's cool.
in fact, one young, I think he was 14, a Jewish boy was on a plane. I don't remember what airline it was, but it was one that they weren't used to Jewish people flying on. And he got up and went back to put the little, they look like little boxes, the phylacteries on, and they actually like arrested him, made him sit and guarded him because they thought he was actually doing something that was going to cause, and he said, I'm Jewish, and they didn't understand. But oh wow, that's the norm. That and surfing, what do they call it when people surf over your head? These little Jewish kids, they have the run of the aisle. They run all over that plane, just like they do in the hotels on Shabbat. It's something. That, you know what they do for entertainment in the hotels? The Orthodox that can afford it go to a hotel on Friday evening before Shabbat starts. And they typically have like 10 kids or more. And the women are dressed beautifully, and the men are all, you'll see them, they'll be with the prayer book, they have the black pants and a white shirt and the kippah and the prayer shawl, and they're standing there, and the men are praying, have this M16 slung over their shoulder. And the kids, because it's a Shabbat elevator, which means it stops on every floor, up and down, because you can't push a button because that's work.
No.
So what do the kids do? They ride the elevators because it stops on every floor. And every floor they get off, they run around like crazy and get on and go to the next floor. That's crazy. I don't know how I got off on that. Okay, and then this next one. International Secret Society's leading plan to demolish the Dome of the Rock. The temple they are planning is for the Masonic Christ, which is the Antichrist. Some Palestinian leaders are aware that Israel and her Western allies are using these negotiations as a trap designed to annihilate Palestinians living in Israel and Jordan. Listen to the stark warning from a Jewish professor. And then this goes back a little. Jewish professor accuses Sharon government of planning ethnic cleansing of Arabs in Israel. So certain people knew what the agenda was back then, but most people didn't. He said, I accuse Ariel Sharon of creating a process in which he will not only intensify the reciprocal bloodshed, but is liable to instigate a regional war and partial or nearly complete ethnic cleansing of the Arabs in the land of Israel. I accuse every Labor Party minister in this government of cooperating for implementation the right wing's extremist fascist vision for Israel. This is a left-wing nutcase Jewish professor, just like here. Therefore, Palestinian leaders are aware of Israel's plan. I believe this understanding is one of the fundamental reasons Palestinians march right up to a deal and then back off. That's what they've been doing all along. The only deal they want is one in which annihilates Israel. Any other type of Palestinian state will result in their annihilation. And they know it. So that's the news. So when you see these negotiations going on, it's not going to happen. I sit sometimes and I think, how is this going to, what is it going to take to kick it off? You know, it's interesting because there's so many different things that could kick it off. Because we're going to see this. And I think we're going to see it within the next few months. At least up until April. I think it's going to come. The Iranian bomb is supposedly going to be done within a month, and that was last week. And they've already vowed, when we get it, we're going to use it. So Israel's not going to let that happen. Israel may appear kind of backward or stupid, but they're on top of everything. They're the smartest people in the world. In every format, in every scientific realm and everything. They're the leading edge of everything. They know what's going on. So, okay, then, what time is it? I talked too long on the news. Okay, I'm just going to hit a couple of these things on that movie we saw last week. I talked about it to some people that I know and explained in the movie and all, and the reaction I always get is, so what?
So what?
So what?
So what?
So what? They don't know where the temple's supposed to be. So what? I said, do you understand the ramifications of everything is focused on the Temple Mount, the Haram, they call it, which is the Antonia Fortress. It's not even where the temple stood. And the Dome of the Rock and all the problems associated with building a temple up on the same Temple Mount as it's called now. But they don't have a clue. So in thinking about it and talking with some people about it, I've kind of arrived at the idea that we understand that Jerusalem was leveled to the bedrock and nobody can find out where anything is. And that's where Christ is going to build his temple in the millennium when he returns. I don't know what's going to happen with the Temple Mount. I think they're going to actually try to build the temple on the Temple Mount. They are going to build a temple. It's all set. It's prefab walls and everything right now, and all the implements and everything they need are ready. It's a matter of time. But where are they going to put it? They're not going to put it down in the city of David. Nobody believes it was even there. I was going to get those, I never got the, I'll put them there so you can look at them. Nobody believes that.
Yeah, but where the water, where we saw in the movie, where the water comes up, that's where the temple was.
Right.
Or part,
Yep,
either the
just
one
like
end
that
or the
drawing.
other, or in the center.
I have a question about the Temple Mount itself, because some of the things that I've read or heard in the last year, say, are that the Temple Mount is going to be, they want it under the control of the Pope, or the Pope is going to try to take control of it. It's international control, so they can have it Jewish and Christian and Islam. Yeah, Islam. All, and they can have it different days. So they said Friday would be Islam, Saturday would be Jewish, and Sunday would be the Christians. And that all that would be right on the Temple Mount. That's what it kind of looks like they're going for.
If it comes to that, it's going to already be the 70th week of Daniel, and the Antichrist is going to be in charge.
Yeah.
You'll be there Sunday.
And it
You'll be there
wouldn't
Sunday.
surprise me
Yeah.
if that's what they.
I'll be there Saturday. Tuesday.
Well, now that dome that's there now, was that built by
That's the Muslims.
huh?
The Muslims?
Yeah.
I forget what year that was.
They had the right to build something, that
Oh,
dome
that's been
there?
there 600 years.
But why were they allowed to build that?
They took it over.
Because they
Oh,
were
they
in
took
charge
it
of
over.
Israel at the time,
So
there
they
was
went-
no Israel.
Huh?
If you go back into the history when the Turks were there and before, it was after the Crusaders, and Jerusalem was never a holy site for like Mecca. They call it, Jerusalem is actually, they say, the third holiest site to Muslims. But there was never anything there for them, except the tradition that that rock holds the footprints of Muhammad as he ascended into heaven. Well, they also say the same thing about Jesus' footprints when he was, being tried by Pilate, which lends more credence to the fact that that was the praetorium where Pilate did interview him, or, judge him, and before that, there was a church built on there by the Crusaders, because it was a Christian site. Constantine's
changed hands
mother,
so many
Helen,
times.
Helene, went looking for these sites, and when you go into the old city, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, when you go, it's really interesting there, but it's about where the Catholic Church has taken over these sites that Constantine's mother determined 300 years after the fact, there's where Jesus was born. Well, you go down the Church of the Nativity, you go downstairs, there's this little doorway, and you have to bend over to go in it, because it was a cave at one time, but they built this humongous church over top of it. And you go down the stone steps. Well, all I heard was that it had been a cave, and we're going to go there, and this is when you could still go in Bethlehem, and we went. And I'm looking and I'm saying, where's the stone walls? They're behind these gorgeous tapestries. You can't see a stone wall. You have to have this gaudy looking mess of velvet and, like Elvis on velvet or something. It's like just gaudy. And you go down the steps, and then there's this little opening, and it's all paved, and they've got this inlaid gold star on the floor, and that's supposed to be the spot where Jesus was born. It's like, I was not impressed. It was like,
Just seems
really? And just, you don't see any cave. You wouldn't think you're in a cave. You think you're just underground with tapestries hanging on the wall. And then we went to, now, in that church, though, we got special permission, because this isn't a tourist site. We had special permission, and this priest had to come with this big key, this antique big key, and open this door that was way down in, but it was through like a tunnel. And it was a first century hidden meeting room for Christians, because the fresco was still on the wall. You could see the painting that they had from the first century. It was faded and, parts of it were gone and all. But that was where Christians would meet, we were told, underground in secret, because they'd be killed. Well, that to me was more holy than where they said their gold star on the floor was, because it was like, we didn't want to leave there. It's just this little tiny, that was really a cave. But the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it's almost like they took a fake cave and put it in a room in the middle of this room. Because it's all empty around it except this church, and every little spot belongs to a different sect of, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, all these people vie for the privilege of having property there. And it's crazy. They all fight over it all the time amongst themselves. But these priests stand there, and you have to pay for it, and you get a candle, and you have to line up in a big long line, and you have to go into the, I wanted to go in it just to say I went in it. I wanted to see what it looked like inside. Because I was at the Garden Tomb, which was more like a first century tomb, like Jesus would have been in. Can't say that that's the one he was in, but it's like the one he was in. But the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you went in there, you had to bend down, and there was the weeping chamber, and then a spot where supposedly his body was laid. And all these people believed this is where it was at. Well, I come out, and after we reassembled, our little group reassembled, I said, that's not it. I know that's not it. How do you know? Because the scripture says, John looks in there, when Peter and John ran there, they looked in to the right, and they saw 2 slabs, because the angel was sitting on the one slab with the folded up head napkin, and asked them, where are you, or who are you looking for, or whatever, I can't remember. But just the configuration of it, there was nowhere to look to the right in this cave, in this whole Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It didn't match scripture. So it's like, people are deluding yourself. You know, they want to believe it. And right outside of it, there's this big marble slab, and when you walk into the church, that's the first thing you see, and all these people are bent down on their knees, kissing this slab, and crying and weeping, because this is where they laid his body to anoint it before they took him to the tomb. It's like, it's not true. But the tradition says it is, and they believe it. So nothing over there like matches, just like that movie. Jerusalem was torn down to the bedrock. There's nothing left of it except for the Antonia Fortress. Why is that still standing? If that was really the Temple Mount, why isn't it stone taken apart stone by stone like it says it was? So I think we're the only ones, those of us who view that movie or study this, we know where Jesus is going to build the temple when he comes back. Meanwhile, the Antichrist temple is going to be on that stinking Temple Mountain. When Fridays, when the Muslims pray, if you walk around like we walk around, you're not allowed to go up on the Temple Mount on Friday because it's their prayers. But when you walk around the area, there's a policeman, an Israeli policeman, behind every tree, bush, and shrub that surrounds the old city. I was totally amazed the first time I saw that on a Friday, because they brought us in from the army base on the bus. We had a bus that was all reinforced underneath and everything for road bombs and everything. And I saw all these police and everything unloading, and they like disappeared. And I said, where are they going? Well, they're getting prepared because the prayers are going to be over soon. And that's when they riot. So they're all in place, and they all, you know, they're all ready for them. And I have been there when you've heard shooting, the rubber bullets. So it's crazy. It's this, but getting back to when people say, well, so what? You know, big deal. The temple's not there. They can't find it. I can't explain why I'm interested anyway. You know, it's hard to say. But anyway, just to summarize, and then I'm going to let Pam take over, to hit a couple of these things. There's a leading, says Lean Rittmeyer, who is the world's leading expert on the architecture of the Haram, the Temple Mount, states that in many places there are 30 to 40 courses of the original Herodian structure below the ground. Do you believe that that's still there intact, even though Jesus said Jerusalem was totally destroyed, taken down to the bedrock? Can't be. This in addition to the massive remains still above the ground from that era. How then could Josephus, the only contemporaneous account of the geography of Jerusalem at the time, quotes that Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed down to bedrock with nothing remaining. The fact is that anyone viewing Jerusalem after the destruction must have seen a massive structure still intact. If that structure was not Jerusalem and not the site of the temple, it must have been the Roman Fort Antonia, because it remained intact. Like many of the Christian sites in Jerusalem, the whereabouts of the original site of the temple was lost for many generations. It has to be remembered that it was only 150 years ago that the city of David was thought to be on the western hill, on the side like towards the Wailing Wall, what they call the Wailing Wall, the western wall. They thought it was over there.
But it's to the left.
It's
To that.
south. It's south of the Temple Mount. Just like
Yeah, it's to the left.
right down.
It's over there.
Here's the Antonia Fortress. City of David is that arch, which is like, you know, that shape. And remember in the movie from the satellite picture, you can still see the, where it was a crescent.
Yeah.
And that was 150 years ago. So, and what's it been? Almost 2,000 years? The discovery of the inscription in Hezekiah's tunnel was the proof that was needed to locate the city of David. Before that, it was taken for granted that Zion and the city of David were in what turned out to be the completely wrong location. Scholars were still arguing those facts less than 100 years ago. So it's all recent, it's new, it's news. But who's teaching it? Who's bringing it out? If the Jews really believe that the city of David housed where the temple was, do you think they'd be worried about the Temple Mount? They'd say, you can have it. We're going to build our temple down here. Well, they really couldn't, because that's the neighborhood of Silwan, which is all Arab anyway, so they still would have a problem, but it would be a lot easier than taking that Temple Mount with that dome up there. That's completely sheathed in gold. The king of Jordan put gold over top of that. From any tactical and geographical consideration, the original Temple of Solomon would never have been built in an exposed northern suburb, which is what the Temple Mount actually is. It must rather have been built in the center of the city of David, which by coincidence is right beside the Gihon Spring, the only water source within 5 miles. For religious and practical reasons, due to the vast amount of animal sacrifices taking place, it was necessary to build the temple near fresh running water. There is none on the Haram, and only the Gihon Spring was such a source at the time of King David and King Solomon. Josephus was quite precise in describing the southern royal court of the temple enclosure. That's the steps at the southern end that Paul preached on. They're still there. They're original. They're not covered over or anything. That's still there on the southern end of the Haram. It stretched from valley to valley and was 606 feet long. The minimum distance from valley to valley on the Temple Mount is 917 feet. We have published maps that show that this description exactly fits the location above the Gihon Spring. So you can see on that, if the original Temple Mount where the temple stood was a 600-foot square stretching from valley, can't say it, Valley of the Cheesemongers. Yeah. And the Kidron Valley, that's 600 feet. It fits there, but the Haram is 917 at that end. It can't go valley to valley. And it wasn't that high. People tend to think because it's higher and sits above everything, that the temple had to be higher. Well, at one time the temple was higher. They filled in the San Antonio, I always say San Antonio, like Texas. The Antonia Fortress, that rock was there which they used to fill in the dirt and build the Herodian stone wall around it. So it wasn't that high. They built it higher so they could overlook the original Temple Mount, so they could look down in and see what the Jews were up to
In the city of
in the city of David. So, because I always thought, well, the highest point. You know, I had those questions. I believed it was the place until I came across this. And then I got real excited. And everybody said, why? So, Fort Antonia was described by Josephus as being like a city with large areas for troop parades, a legion of troops, 5,000 fighting and 5,000 for support, was housed there. And only the Haram fits the description, and the small area now designated the site of the fort would have been impossibly small. When that film, that man who did that, the temple, or the old city and the temple layout, I was at that place. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff when I was there, but yeah, I can remember he had a little thing built off, it jutted out off center from what the Temple Mount shows. And he had the temple in the center of the Haram. Well, that's wrong. Because they said, Josephus said that it ran in line with the Temple Mount, which it did if it was built in the city of David and was connected by the two bridges.
Yeah.
That's where it's at. We know the truth.
King Solomon built the temple on the site of the threshing floor of Arona, how you say that? Yeah, Arana, which was in the city of David. The Haram never was in the city of David. It sits to the south of it. Like all major fortresses, Josephus describes Fort Antonia as being built over a rock, the highest point in the area. No biblical description of the temples includes such a feature. There was no rock. And you saw the rock in the rabbinic tunnel when he went down, and that's why it's not seen anywhere else. It's still in there. The Wailing Wall in the early literature, including the Talmud, refers to the western wall of the temple itself. Nobody believes that the wall described today is anything other than the outer wall of a Herodian structure. So where's the original Wailing Wall? It's gone.
They're all standing
They
there
took it
praying
all
to that
apart.
wall. It's not the Wailing Wall.
Yeah. So, finishing up, in 2,000 years of research, excavation, and exploration, including a protracted search by the Templars, the Knights of the Templars, not one single artifact from the temples of Jerusalem has ever been found. They're finding it now, since this article was published. They're finding it now because Dr. Mazar, the archaeologist who's now excavating, did I bring it with me? Anyhow, she's uncovering down in the city of David the Wall of Solomon. And they're finding artifacts now that have to do with the temple, which proves that's down where it's supposed to be. Now she's finding them. So, to me, it's conclusive evidence that the temple was originally in the city of David.